In response to COVID-19, PSP is offering telefitness to Canadian Armed Forces members. By using social media platforms, the telefitness classes tailored to Canadian Armed Forces personnel become accessible to all. Prior to participating in this session, and to make an informed decision on whether you should seek advice from a qualified exercise professional or healthcare provider, consult the Get Active questionnaire of the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiology and its reference document by clicking on the links below. By continuing with this telefitness class, you understand that there is a possibility of physical injury and you agree that you do so voluntarily at your own risk. You also assume all risk of injury and agree to release the Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services from any and all claims related to your participation in this telefitness class.
Hi everyone, my name is Deidre and I am a military fitness and sports instructor in Petawawa. Today I'm going to be leading you through a yoga flow class. So take breaks when you need to and let's get started. For today's class, we're going to get started on our back. So slowly making your way down to your back, you're going to extend both legs out long on the mat. And then either having your hands down beside your body or open into a T position with your palms facing up. Let your shoulder blades sink into the mat. Let your toes roll open to either edge. Inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose. Let your body settle into this position. Option to close down the eyes if you haven't already. Settling here for 5 more breaths. Taking a nice deep inhale through the nose. And out of the nose. Inhaling. And exhaling. Inhaling. Exhaling. 2 more big breaths on your own. And at the end of your exhale, you're going to bend your knees, planting your feet on the floor so you can adjust your hips, letting your low back come into the floor and then hugging both knees into your chest. Option to rock side to side. One more rock in either direction and then coming back through stillness. You're going to keep your right knee tucked in, flexing both toes back towards your shins, and then you're going to extend your left leg straight up to the ceiling. From here, you're going to slowly lower that left leg all the way down to the floor so that your heel can rest down on the floor. From here, you're going to create small circles into this right hip. You're going to do 3 in one direction and then 3 in the opposite direction. Moving nice and slow, keeping the movements controlled. After you finish your 3 in either direction, you're going to keep that right knee tucked in. And then from here, you're going to come in through half happy baby. So you're going to take your right hand to your right calf, ankle, or foot, whatever is accessible for you. And you're going to take your left hand down onto your left thigh. Just keeping in mind that you want to keep that left hip anchored to the floor. From here, you're going to bend through your left foot, planting your foot on the floor. And then coming through figure 4, taking your right ankle to your left knee, squaring off the hips. And then taking your right hand into your right knee, you're going to create resistance. So pressing your hand into the knee and your knee into the hand. And then taking your left foot to lift up off the floor. Keeping those active feet, flexing the toes back towards your shins. And then moving through figure 4, planting your left foot back to the floor. Fully cross your right leg over your left leg. Arms are going to come into a T. Hips are going to move to the right, and your knees are going to drop down to the left. Keeping both shoulders anchored to the floor. And your right hip is going to be lifted from the floor. Legs are going to come back through center, uncrossing the legs, squaring off the hips. And then you're going to hug both knees back into your chest and coming back to that slow rock side to side. One more rock in either direction. And then coming back through stillness. Coming through half happy baby on the other side. We're going to come through our hip circles first. So flexing both of the feet and then extending that right leg straight up to the ceiling and extending that leg slowly down to the floor with control. Coming through 3 directions of circles. Nice and slow. Once you finish 3 in one direction, you're going to switch and go the opposite way. And once you finish your last one, you're going to keep that knee tucked into the chest. And then from here, you're going to come through half happy baby. So grabbing onto that calf, ankle, or foot, like so. And then taking that right hand onto the right thigh. Remembering to keep that right hip anchored. Both shoulders are coming down to the floor. Coming through figure 4, you're going to bend through your right knee and then taking your left ankle onto your right knee. Again, creating that resistance, left hand pressing to left knee and left knee pressing into left hand. Still flexing the toes back towards your shin and trying to keep your hips square to the mat. Your low back should be firmly pressing into the floor. Option to stay here or lifting through that right leg. Opening up through the hips. Taking that right foot back to the floor. You're going to fully cross your left leg over your right leg. Arms are coming out into that T again. This time hips are moving to the left and knees are dropping down to the right. Both shoulders are staying anchored to the floor, and your left hip is going to be lifting from the floor. Slowly bringing both legs back through center, uncrossing and squaring off the hips. You're going to take both legs straight up to the ceiling. Your arms are going to start out into a T position with your palms facing up. And then you're going to square off the hips so that both hips are planted to the mat. Your low back is pressing into the floor. Your toes are flexing back towards your shins. And then you're going to reach your arms back behind your head. Interlace your fingers and create a little yogi pistol with your hands. And then from here, keeping that core engagement, you're going to lower down your right leg to hover off the floor. And then reaching your arms up and over, you're going to shoot your little yogi pistol towards your toes. Inhaling to come back through center, reaching your arms up and overhead. And then left foot slowly lowers down to hover from the floor. And then reaching towards those left toes. Inhale to come up. Exhale to lower. This time, becoming a little bit more fluent with the movement. Rising up with your upper body as your foot lowers to the floor. Two more on either side. Last one coming up on the left. Hug both knees in and rock side to side. You're going to take your hands in behind your legs and then slowly start to rock up and down the length of the spine until you can come through to a seated position. From there, you're going to cross your ankles and then flip over into a tabletop position. Your wrists should be stacked underneath your shoulders. Your knees should be stacked underneath your hips. And having a nice neutral spine, so try not to round or drop through the spine at all. From here, you're going to take your left hand to the center of your body, so lining up with your face or your chest. And then you're going to take your right hand to your right ear. Taking your right elbow to your left elbow, you're going to open up as much as you can without opening up through the hips. Close off. Opening up, closing off one more time. And this time as you open up, you're going to extend that top arm and weave your arm underneath the left side of your body. letting your right ear rest into the floor. Trying to keep your hips square. Pressing in through that left hand to open up through the chest one more time, and then plant the hand down to the floor. Moving on to the left side, same thing. Right hand's gonna come to the center of the body. Left hand, left ear. Meeting elbows, opening up. Closing. Opening. Closing. One more time to open up, this time extending the arm, and then weaving that arm underneath the right side of your body. Start to press in through that right hand, opening up through the chest, and then planting the hand down to the floor. Making sure that your knees are stacked underneath your hips again. Ankles should be flexed, so your toes should be tucked under here. You're going to start by dropping the belly down and extending the gaze up through the ceiling. And then you're going to tuck the chin into the chest and around the back. Pressing firmly through your hands. Drop the belly, extend the gaze. Tuck the chin around the back. Drop the belly, extend the gaze. Tuck the chin around the back. 2 more times, just like that, moving at your own pace. Try not to rush through. Last round. And then coming back through a neutral spine. From here, keeping your toes tucked under, you're going to shift your hips up and back for your first downward facing dog. Option 2, pedal out through either of the knees. Bring a little bit of movement in through your downward facing dog. And then coming through stillness, pressing your hips back, trying to bring your chest towards your thighs, even though they're never actually going to touch. Widening through the fingers and the toes. Your gaze can be at your knees or your belly button, keeping a long line through the neck. Slowly start to bend through the knees. Bring your gaze towards your big fingers, and then you're going to walk your feet up to the top of your mat. Inhale to look forward, keeping a nice flat back. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, reaching the arms up and overhead. Exhale, letting the arms go down to either side of the body. We're going to move through 5 rounds of Sun Salutation A. We'll start off slow and then start to incorporate the breath into the movement. Reaching your arms up and overhead, and then swan diving down into your forward fold. Coming into that halfway lift, you can keep your fingertips tented to the floor or bringing the hands up to your shins. Coming back through to your fold, and then you're going to step back into a plank. Pressing firmly through the hands, gaze is in between the thumbs. Lowering down to a hover or all the way, and then pulling the chest forward, upward facing dog. Tucking the chin into your chest, downward facing dog. Holding here for 3 breaths. Bringing your gaze to the thumbs, bend the knees, stepping forward to the top of the mat. Halfway lift, folding, and then coming all the way up through standing. Arms reaching up and overhead. Letting the arms fall down to either side. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, stepping back and lowering down to the floor or to hover. Inhale, pulling the chest forward. Exhale, downward facing dog. Holding here for 2 more. Inhaling and exhaling. 1 more inhale and exhaling. Gaze comes to the thumbs, bend the knees, step the feet to the top of the mat. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale to fold. Inhale, reach all the way up. Exhale, hands float down. 3 more. Inhale, reaching up. Exhale, folding. Inhale, half lift. Exhale to step back and either lower to a hover or all the way down. Inhale to pull the chest forward. Exhale, downward facing dog. Keeping that consistent breath in and out of the nose. 1 more breath, inhaling and exhaling. Gaze comes forward, slight bend to the knees, stepping to the top of the mat. Inhaling for your lift and exhaling to fold. Inhale, rise all the way up. Exhale, arms come down beside the body. Inhale, reaching up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale to step back and lower down to a hover or all the way. Inhale to pull the chest forward. Exhale, downward facing dog. One more big breath, inhaling and exhaling. Gaze comes forward, bend the knees, stepping to the top of the mat. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale to fold. Inhale, rise all the way up. Exhale, arms float down. Last time through. Inhale, reaching up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale to step or float back to your plank. Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Smoothing out the breath. Nice big inhale. And exhale. Gaze comes forward, stepping or hopping lightly to the top of the mat. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, rise all the way up. Exhale, arms float down. You're going to bend your knees and sink your hips, coming through chair pose. Reaching the arms up and overhead. Try to let the weight come into the heels of your feet. Exhale to fold, plant your hands. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Stepping your right foot back, followed by your left foot, coming through plank. Lower down to hover. Pull the chest forward, upward facing dog. Exhale, coming through downward facing dog. Right foot's gonna lift. Look back and check to see that your knee and toes are facing towards the mat so your hips aren't opening up towards the side. It's not about how high you get the leg. You want to keep that squaring action through the hips. From here, looking forward through the thumbs, you're gonna round forward and then step your foot in between your hands. Slowly rising up, coming through crescent lunge. Sinking that back hip down. Exhale to plant the hands to the front of the mat. Trying to keep your hands underneath your shoulders, you're going to step your right foot back to your plank, lower down through a hover, pull the chest forward, upward facing dog, and then moving through downward facing dog. Left foot rises, look back at your knee and your toes, check and see if you're square. Slowly start to round forward and step that knee between the toes. Slowly starting to rise up, coming through crescent lunge. Pulling that right hip forward. Squaring the hips to the front of the mat. Exhale to plant the hands down. And then starting to drag that left foot back, moving through your vinyasa. Meeting in downward facing dog. Gaze comes forward between the thumbs, bend the knees. You're going to step your right foot forward, followed by your left foot. Inhaling to halfway lift. Exhaling to fold. And then bending your knees, sink your hips, arms are rising up and overhead, coming through your chair. Inhale to stand up. Exhale, hands float down. Bend your knees, sink your hips. Arms are rising up and overhead. Exhale to fold. This time, you're going to firmly plant your hands into the floor, and then you're going to slightly bring your feet back a little bit. Bring your big toes to touch. Option to stay here in this movement, lifting your heels from the floor, or come through crow practice. So you're going to bring your weight into your hands, your gaze is going to be forward, and you're going to bring your elbows to your upper arms. So try to keep looking forward. You may only be here today, and that's totally okay. Holding for 2 more. If you're in this position down with your toes on the floor, option to step back to a plank. And if you're in your high crow like so, option to step back to a plank or exhale and float back to a lowered plank. Inhale to pull the chest forward. Exhale, downward facing dog. Right foot's gonna lift, check the toes and the knee. Round forward, bringing the foot in between the hands. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, hands are going to plant. Step your foot back, lower through a hover. Pull the chest forward. Downward facing dog. Left foot rises, squaring off the hips, rolling forward, step the foot through at the top of the mat. Inhale to come up into your crescent lunge. Exhale, hands float down, stepping your foot back, lower through a hover, pulling the chest forward, upward facing dog, downward facing dog. Gaze comes forward. You're going to bend through the knees. Step your left foot forward, followed by your right. Coming through a halfway lift. Exhale to fold. And then you're going to bend your knees, sink your hips, reaching your arms up and overhead. Coming through that chair pose again. Inhale to stand up. Exhale, arms float down. Starting off in the same way as last time, bend your knees, sink your hips, arms are going to float up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Firmly pressing those hands into the floor, setting up for wherever you're going, whether it's keeping your toes on the floor or hovering maybe one foot or both feet off. Holding for 2 more. And then wherever you are, either stepping or floating back to your hover. Pull the chest forward, upward facing dog, downward facing dog. Right foot rises. Step the foot through at the top of the mat. Inhale, rising up, crescent lunge. From here, your back foot's going to pivot 90 degrees, and you're going to open up to warrior 2. From here, front palm is going to flip, back hand comes to the low back, reaching up and overhead, exalted warrior. Inhaling to come back through warrior 2. You're going to take your front forearm to your front knee, and your top arm is going to sweep down in front of the body to reach up and overhead, coming through a variation of side angle. Reaching back up through warrior 2. Pausing. Straightening your front leg, you're going to take your right toes to turn the same way as your left toes. So both toes are facing the long side of the mat. Inhaling to get long. Exhale, your arms are going to come back and behind your body, interlacing your fingers. Inhaling to pull the chest forward. Exhaling, leading with the chest to come in through a fold. You're trying to bring the crown of your head towards the floor, evenly distributing the weight through your feet. Letting your shoulder heads roll in. One more big breath, inhaling. And exhaling. Inhaling, bracing through the core, rising up. Letting your arms go out to either side, coming back through warrior two. Right toes pivot towards the front of the mat, coming back into that lunge. You're going to cartwheel both hands down to the front of your mat. Drop your back knee down, and then shift your weight over your back knee, coming through a half split. Flexing your front toes towards your shin. Rolling forward, planting the hands outside of the front foot. Pick up your back knee, moving through a twist, opening up towards your knee. And then from here, you're going to shift onto the outer blade of each foot and then coming through a side plank. So move nice and slow. You can come down to one knee if you need to. You can have both blades of your feet on the mat. You can elevate one leg to make it a little bit more difficult. And then from here, you're going to pivot both toes to come back down to the mat, lower down, move through your vinyasa, meeting in downward facing dog. Left foot rises, rolling forward, step the foot through at the top of the mat, rising up, crescent lunge. Opening up warrior two, back foot pivots 90 degrees. Front palm flips, back hand comes to the low back, reaching up and overhead for exalted warrior. Coming back through warrior two, and then coming through variation of side angle, front forearm, front knee, top arm sweeps down and around the front of the body to reach that arm up and overhead. Try not to dump all your weight into this front knee. Your arm is resting very lightly. Inhale, coming back through warrior two. Pausing. Straightening that front leg. Left toes are going to face the same way as the right toes. Inhaling. Exhaling, arms are going to come down behind the body, interlacing your fingers the awkward way. Inhale to get the chest nice and tall. Exhale, forward fold, leading with the chest. Again, trying to evenly distribute the weight through the feet. Try not to have all the weight into your heels. The crown of your head is looking for the floor. Shoulder heads are rolling in. Breath is long. Two more big breaths. Inhale. Exhaling. One more breath in. Inhale. And exhale. Engaging through the core. Inhale, pulling the chest forward. Arms come out nice and long. Pivot the front toes forward, bending back into that front leg, warrior two. Cartwheeling the hands down to the front of the mat. Back toes pivot forward. Drop your back knee down. And then shift your weight over your back knee, coming through half split. Shifting your weight back forward, picking up the back knee, and then opening up towards the left knee for a twist. From here, we're opening up into that side plank. So pivoting onto the outer edge of both feet, and then stepping back through your side plank. Again, many variations. Drop down to the knees. You can stack both blades of the feet on the floor. Both feet can be stacked on top of each other, elevating the top foot for an extra challenge. And then you're going to pivot both hands and feet forward, moving through your vinyasa, pulling the chest forward, moving through downward facing dog. Knees are going to drop down to the mat. You're going to bend your ankles and then sit back on your butt, extending both legs straight out in front of you. Once you're here, you're going to sit up nice and tall, and you're going to take your right leg in towards you like a tree pose. Okay, so you're going to try to sit up as tall as you can here, flexing your left toes back towards your shin, and then as you exhale, you're going to curl your hands down your leg, coming through for a forward fold. You may be only coming towards your calf, your ankle, maybe your toes, maybe you might be reaching beyond the foot. Reach wherever is comfortable for you, trying to keep your hips and shoulders square to the mat. Inhale to look forward, staying for the exhale, and then coming back all the way through a seated. You're going to take your right foot and plant it down on the floor, and then opening up towards your bent leg, you're going to take your outer left arm to your right leg, and then opening up for a twist, trying to bring your gaze back towards that shoulder behind you. Option to stay here, or you can take that left arm to the inside of your right leg. Slowly releasing, coming back through center, extend the right leg out, left leg comes in, setting up for that forward fold. Toes are flexing back towards your shin. Inhale to get nice and long, and then exhaling to fold, reaching for whatever is accessible to you. Inhaling, looking forward, staying for the exhale, and then inhaling to come back through center, planting the left foot down on the floor, and then twisting towards that front bent leg. Trying to bring your gaze back behind your shoulder. And then option to stay here, or take that right arm to the outside of the left leg. Slowly starting to release. Both legs come back out in front of you. Inhaling, sitting up nice and tall, and then exhaling to come into that forward fold, hinging forward, reaching for whatever's accessible for you. So maybe it's, again, the calves, the ankles, the toes, maybe it's beyond but think of keeping the legs active. Keep pulling the legs together, rolling the inner thighs out. Inhale, looking forward. Staying for the exhale. Inhaling, rolling all the way back up. You're going to bend both knees and then slowly lower down to the floor. Bring your knees in towards your glutes so that your fingertips can just touch them. We're going to move through 3 back bends, holding each one for 5 breaths. So each time we go through, I'll demonstrate the next variation up. If you want to stay with the same thing the entire 3 rounds, that's totally fine. Or if you'd like to progress each time, there's going to be the option for that as well. So pressing your hands and feet firmly into the floor. You're engaging through the core, pressing your low back down into the floor as well. Inhaling, we're going to lift the hips up. Pressing the hands and feet firmly into the floor. Slightly toning through the glutes. Keeping the engagement through the core. Holding here for 2 more. See if you can inch those glutes a little bit higher. Last breath in. And as you exhale, slowly lowering down back to the floor. This time, setting up the same way, option to do option 1 again, or option 2, as we lift our hips up, everyone will inhale together, lifting the hips. You're going to clasp the hands underneath the back, rolling the shoulder heads in, firmly pressing through the glutes, pulling your knuckles down towards your heels. Keeping that breath nice and long. Hips are pressing up. Holding here for 2 more. Inhaling. Exhaling. Last big breath in. Releasing the clasp of the hands if you have it. Placing the hands down to the mat. Exhaling, lower down. The last variation is going to be bridge pose. So if you're familiar with it, you can go ahead and get set up. If not, I'll walk you through it. So feet are going to stay in the same position as the first 2 options. This time you're going to bring your palms to either ear with your elbows pointing up. Firmly pressing through the heels, and you're going to drive through the hands this time in a different position. On your inhale breath, everyone's going to lift their hips up towards the ceiling, like so, and holding. If you're in wheel, knees should be pressing forward. Try not to let your knees flare open to either edge of the mat. Keeping your breath long. Inhaling. Exhaling. 2 more. Inhale. Exhale. Last big breath in. And then exhaling, lowering down from wherever you are. Taking a moment to let all the sensations in the body to dissipate. And then letting your legs go long on the mat, keeping your arms open with your palms facing up. letting your toes roll open to either edge of the mat. Taking a moment or two for yourself to quietly finish your practice. Keeping the breath long. Coming back through your regular breath cycle. Starting to bring a little bit of movement back into your body by wiggling the fingers and the toes. Maybe opening up through the fingers and the toes. And then you're going to sweep your legs together, bringing your big toes to touch, sweeping your arms up and overhead, just like at the beginning of class, reaching as long as you can as you inhale. And then exhaling, letting your body sink into the mat. One more time, just like that. Inhale, reach nice and long. Exhale, sinking into the mat. Slowly coming up into a seated position at the top of your mat, whether it's cross-legged or sitting on your knees. And then bringing your arms up and overhead, bringing your hands down and chest level. Just like to thank each and every one of you for practicing with me today. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.